You spend good money on moisturizer. You buy the serum, the night cream, the eye treatment, and the results still disappoint. Now think about Marilyn Monroe, not the icon, the woman who had to look the way she looked under studio lights that forgave nothing. That skin, that particular glow. She kept a jar of Vaseline on the vanity. $3, one ingredient. She wasn't being frugal. She was being right. The beauty industry spent 70 years turning what Marilyn did with drugstore products into procedures that cost hundreds of dollars. They took her $3 jar and called it slugging. They took her peach fuzz and built a dermaplaning industry around removing it. They took her double cleanse, documented in a prescription from 1959, and sold it back as a modern discovery. She wasn't ahead of her time. They just needed time to figure out how to charge for it. Every single thing Marilyn Monroe did for her skin has a real mechanism. Chemistry, optics, biology. She arrived at all of it by observation, decades before the studies caught up. If you're the kind of woman who always suspected your mother knew something the industry didn't want you to know, you're in the right place. Click the like button so YouTube keeps bringing you back here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's a good time. Now here's what I found when I looked into exactly what Marilyn was doing with that jar. She wasn't just dabbing it on her lips before bed. Whitey Snyder, her personal makeup artist, the man who knew her face better than anyone, applied Vaseline directly to her cheekbones and brows before the cameras rolled. For the glow. For the reflection under the lights. And according to Renee Taylor, who was with her at the actor's studio, Marilyn rubbed it all over her body before soaking in the bath for 3 hours. Her exact words, "It gives my skin a shiny glow." 3 hours, one ingredient, 39 cents. Here's the mechanism, and this is the part nobody tells you. Vaseline doesn't add moisture, it seals it. It's what dermatologists call an occlusive. It sits on top of the skin and stops water from escaping. That's the whole secret. Marilyn understood this before the terminology existed. In 2022, the beauty industry rediscovered this and named it slugging, sold it as a breakthrough. Mr. Marketing took a 50-cent solution and turned it into a $40 experience. She was doing it in 1955. I want to know, did your mother keep Vaseline in the house, on the nightstand, in the bathroom, in her purse? Tell me where you remember seeing it. Her dermatologist prescribed her a hormone cream, active Felitol cream, Dr. Erno Laszlo's formula, the same man who treated Garbo, Hepburn, Ava Gardner. As a side effect, Marilyn developed a fine layer of blonde down across her face, peach fuzz, the soft kind that catches light. Her advisors told her to remove it. She said no. Not because she forgot, not because she didn't care, because she watched what happened under the studio lights when those fine hairs caught the beam, and she liked what she saw. The light scattered. The skin looked softer. The image blurred at the edges in exactly the way that made a photograph look like it had been touched by something you couldn't quite name. She understood the optics without calling them optics, and then she applied Vaseline on top to amplify the effect. My mother would have called that common sense. Here's the mechanism. Fine facial hair diffracts direct light. Instead of reflecting sharply off the surface of the skin, the light hits those hairs first and scatters, creating the same soft focus illusion that digital filters now simulate with algorithms. Marilyn had figured out the analog version, with a side effect she refused to eliminate and a $3 jar. Today, that same principle, in reverse, is sold as dermaplaning, a Bistouri to the face, $200–300 a session. The selling point is that removing the hair lets light hit the skin more cleanly, improves product absorption, creates a smoother canvas. Which is true. It's just the opposite decision for the opposite effect at a considerable cost. It's not complicated. It never was. One woman paid nothing and kept what worked. The other pays every 6 weeks to undo it. I want you to think of one woman in your life who is paying for dermaplaning right now. Someone spending $200-300 a session to do what Marilyn Monroe refused to undo for free. Someone in your family should know this. Send her this video. In 1952, every woman in California wanted a tan. Coco Chanel had spent 30 years making the bronzed look synonymous with health, leisure, modernity. You were golden or you were indoors. That was the culture. That was the aspiration. Marilyn Monroe lived in California, was photographed constantly, and said in print in the Pageant magazine in September of 1952, "I don't think suntan skin is any more attractive or any healthier for that matter." She avoided the sun, went out covered, refused the tan that everyone around her was chasing. I have to be honest with you. I did the same thing for 40 years and called it being modern. Followed every trend, bought every promise. The older I get, the more I realize my mother was right. Here's what the science now confirms. UV radiation breaks down collagen and elastin, causes hyperpigmentation, and accelerates cellular aging at a rate nothing else matches. Sun protection is the only item in skincare with decades of unambiguous evidence behind it. The only one. Marilyn arrived at that conclusion by observation in 1952. The dermatology consensus caught up sometime in the 1980s, 30 years later. Now, if what you're seeing here is making you want to go deeper into exactly what these women knew and how to bring it into your life today, I put it all together in one place. Everything we're covering, and more. QR code is on your screen right now. Link is in the description. Take a look. Let me show you something.
On March 17, 1959, Dr. Erno Laszlo, the Hungarian dermatologist whose client list included Greta Garbo, Audrey Hepburn, Ava Gardner, and Jackie Kennedy, sat down and wrote a prescription. Addressed to Mrs. Marilyn Monroe Miller, signed, dated, specific. That document exists today. It's on display at the Makeup Museum in New York, and when I found it, I genuinely had to put it down for a minute, because what's on that prescription isn't exotic. It isn't complicated. The morning protocol: wash face and neck with warm water and a specific soap. Apply toner with a soaked cotton pad. Dot eye cream below the lashes. Finish with a light powder and remove after 60 seconds. The evening protocol: cleanse with oil first, then cream, then a controlling lotion left overnight on the nose and chin. Oil first, then cream. Write this one down. That sequence, cleansing with oil before any other product, is exactly what went viral on TikTok as double cleansing. A discovery, a revelation, a trend. 70 years after Laszlo prescribed it to Marilyn Monroe in a letter that was sitting in a museum the entire time. He also restricted her diet. No nuts, no chocolate, no oysters, no shellfish. The reasoning was skin inflammation, which is precisely what nutritional medicine now calls an anti-inflammatory protocol. The knowledge wasn't hidden. It was in a document that nobody found relevant to republish because there was no product to sell alongside it. Mr. Marketing really hates simple things. When I first found this prescription, a letter addressed to Mrs. Marilyn Monroe Miller, dated March 1959, sitting in a museum, I genuinely had to put it down for a minute. Now I want to know, what's the detail so far that made you stop? Tell me below. I read every single one. The prescription was one piece of it. But Laszlo wasn't the only one paying attention to what went into the body. Marilyn described her own diet in a 1952 interview as absolutely bizarre, her words. And by the standards of post-war America, when white bread, casseroles, and pie were the architecture of a normal meal, she wasn't wrong to call it that. Her mornings: a cup of warm milk with 2 raw eggs beaten into it, swallowed while she got dressed. A multivitamin, nothing else. Her evenings: grilled meat, steak, lamb chops, or liver, with 4 or 5 raw carrots on the side. I must be part rabbit, she said. I never get bored with raw carrots. No refined carbohydrates, high complete protein, raw vegetables, no snacking,
no starch, no pie.
What the nutrition world now calls low-carb, high-protein, the dietary framework that fills entire bookstore sections, that spawned industries, that gets repackaged every decade under a different name. Marilyn was living it in 1952 and calling it bizarre because nobody around her was doing it. And I think you already know this, actually, because the emphasis on complete protein, eggs, red meat, organ meat, is precisely what nutritionists today recommend for women above 50, for muscle retention, for skin integrity, for everything that starts quietly declining when the diet stays stuck in 1985. My girls, you already knew this. You just didn't have the language for it yet, and neither did she. She described it herself in Life magazine in 1952. I have evolved my own exercises for the muscles I wish to keep firm. Evolved. Her word. As if she'd run the experiment herself and arrived at a conclusion. Here's what the experiment looked like. Every morning, before anything else, she got down on the floor beside her bed. Not a gym, not a studio, the bedroom floor. She held 5-pound weights, small ones, nothing impressive, and raised them from a T position with her arms wide open, up above her head 15 times. Then moved them in circles at 45 degrees until her arms gave out. 10 minutes. That was the whole thing. The fitness industry will sell you the opposite of this at every opportunity. The membership, the class, the instructor, the program, the equipment that folds into the closet and stays there. Complexity is the product. Marilyn did that with 10 minutes and a bedroom floor. And here's what the science now confirms. Short, consistent resistance training sessions are more effective for body composition than long, intermittent ones, particularly for women, where consistency outperforms intensity every single time. She didn't know the terminology. She knew the result. 10 minutes, on the floor beside her bed. That's the whole thing. And if this kind of thinking, simple, consistent, no equipment, sounds familiar, it's because our mothers were doing it too. I have a video that goes much deeper into exactly that. It's coming up in the card above. Go watch it when we're done here. Whitey Snyder had been doing Marilyn's makeup since 1946. He knew her face the way a cartographer knows a map. Every angle, every shadow, every place where the light landed wrong under Technicolor. And the lips were a problem. Not because they weren't beautiful, because the camera ate color and spat out orange. A true red under those lights would shift warm, flatten, lose its depth. So Whitey used batons with a slightly blue undertone, cooler than anything that looked right in the mirror, because he was painting for the lens, not the room. Then came the layering. Liner drawn just slightly outside the natural edge to extend the border. Deep red on the outer portions of the lip. A lighter red at the center. Gloss on the cupid's bow and the middle of the lower lip. The whole process repeated 2-3 times in layers, building depth the way a painter builds shadow. 5 different tones of red. No needles, no filler, no appointment. The mechanism is pure optics. Contrast between light and shadow within a small surface creates the illusion of 3 dimensions. My mother would have called that common sense. This technique was rediscovered in the 2000s, credited as innovation, attributed to a new generation. It was never new. It was in Whitey Snyder's kit in 1955. It's not complicated. It never was. 7 secrets, 7 things she figured out. And the industry spent decades repackaging with new names and new prices. If you want everything in one place, the ingredients, the techniques, the history, it's in the guide. QR code is on your screen. Link is in the description. This is for women who are done paying to relearn what their mothers already knew. Marilyn Monroe didn't have access to science that wasn't available to everyone else. She had something the industry has spent 70 years trying to replace with products. Attention. She watched what happened. She kept what worked.
She refused to abandon it because someone told her it was too simple.
The dermaplaning, the slugging, the double cleanse, the high-protein diet, the resistance training.
The dermatology caught up eventually. It always does. It just arrived with a price tag attached. If she was right about all of this, that nobody believed at the time, what else did she know that nobody ever found profitable enough to tell you? My girls, you already knew this. You just needed someone to say it out loud. If you want to go deeper, the guide is in the description. QR code is still on your screen. Subscribe if this felt like a conversation you needed to have. Hit like if you're walking away thinking differently about something. And leave me one thing in the comments. Which secret hit closest to home? I'll read every one. Someone in your family should know this. Send it to them. This one's worth keeping.